What's up, troopers? Today we are going to talk about how to deal with armor. We're specifically talking about if you are playing the game and your opponent has a bunch of armor on the other side of the board, or even just one armor piece that's very scary. Like, what are you going to do about that? And I think that the first thing that we can cover as far as that goes is like from an army perspective, there are there's various ways to think about constructing your list both from a unit and a weapon choice perspective. But Mike, I'm curious, when you're building a list, are you actively thinking about how am I going to deal with armor with every single list you build?
These days, I am a little bit, to be
Hmm.
honest. Whether it is just strictly armor or how I can deal with armor and droids, or there are some two birds, one stone sort of situations there. But yes, absolutely, you need to have a plan for how to deal with your opponent's armor units, even if that plan is I'm going to ignore them, right? Like
Yeah.
that is a plan you can have. So whether that means you're going to take impact weapons, whether that means you're going to take weapons that have high amount of dice in their pools, or you're going to just kind of maybe you're taking a bunch of lightsaber guys. You kind of need to figure out how much you're willing to devote for that, and like part of it is making a little bit of a meta call too, right? Like how much armor do I think I'm going to see? If everybody at my local store plays two tanks in every one of their lists, like you got to play uh, solutions that are going to deal with armor 5, and those solutions tend to be pretty different than the solutions that deal with a bunch of like ATRTs at armor 2. Like they're at least how effective they are at dealing with those situations.
I think that that transitions well into talking about impact itself for a little bit, Mike, because the value of impact on a weapon changes based on the armor number of the target that you're shooting at. And so, what I mean is that if you have a weapon pool that has like 8 dice and it has impact one, uh, if you're shooting at a ATRT, um, then that impact is only actually going to quote matter if you if you hit two or less actual total hits on the shot, because then it's going to change one of those true crits so you can do at least a little bit of damage. But if you had a pretty good roll, and so for instance, if you're expecting a pretty good roll, if you get like five hits against the ATRT, then two of those are still going to be regular hits at the end of the impact change, and therefore like the impact didn't matter in that shot. So part of this matters of list building, but part of it just matters in the way that you play the game. But the way I would summarize it is ideally you want to try to make the most out of the impact value on the weapons that you have. And sometimes that means split firing, right, Mike?
It does. Basically, the thing that you want to be doing, whether it's in the list building stage or in the actual playing the game stage, is to make sure that when you're applying impact to a dice pool, you're applying it to the smallest pool possible where that impact is effective,
Yes.
right? So I'm going to use the clone rocket launcher as an example.
Right.
The clone rocket launcher is generally much more effective if you just fire the rainbow into one target and the rest of the squad shot into something else, particularly with the new cover rules and all that jazz. Um, because most of the time you are either going to use the impact or you're going to go up over the top of the armor value or you're going to waste a bunch of stuff. Like it's
Yep.
one or the other. Um,
Try not to waste dice results,
yeah.
because the clone with a single RPS is a really good example because you have four black and a single rainbow. If you're shooting an ATRT, uh, like with that whole pool, then having four total hits is like a decent thing. It's like a decently average thing to expect as far as like an actual result.
Yep.
And if you get those four hits, then guess what? That impact two is doing nothing for you.
Right. Same thing.
It would be the same as if a naked squad, managed to get four hits on that same ATRT. And so, like you're generally playing the averages when you're choosing how to make those shots. Um, this is why the ATRT laser cannon is considered to be a very valuable impact weapon because it has as much impact as it has dice. So when you're shooting at an armored target, that impact is never going to waste. And it even has surge to crit to like make everything better. And and so that's just like a key thing to remember when you're shooting at armor, is like try not to waste dice results. Um, that example is especially true if you were shooting at like an ATST with that clone with the RPS. It's true that like you could be crit fishing a little bit by tossing in those other dice, but the chances are that you're like maybe you'll see one crit if it's like 8 dice, but then even then it's sort of a 50-50 ish shot. And so if there's something else you could be doing that's useful to shoot up those other guns at, then think about it, because if you score six regular hits on an ATST with that shot, then you're still only doing two, compared to if you did 2 regular hits with the RPS and do the exact same damage to it. So just think about that.
Yeah, I do think this is maybe a good place to talk about critical a little bit because that math does change
That's
somewhat.
true. That's
You
true.
know,
Search
if
or
you
crit
have
or critical.
yeah, if you have either of those two things in your pool, um, you can definitely start thinking about doing kind of just like shoving the whole thing at it. The
Right.
thing is, you're probably still gonna waste a bunch of hits if you do that,
Yeah.
but it is more reasonable to kind of go crit fishing in those situations.
Yep. Totally agree. All right. So we talked about impact a little bit. Another item is ion weapons. I think all of which have impact built into them. Ion is more prevalent than it used to be in this game in New Legion because pretty much every ion weapon in the past had to get actively refreshed, and now that's no longer the case with any of them. So
Yep.
you'd see it fairly frequently land speeders. You see it on rebel troopers, especially because they also gave that critical one. Um, you'd certainly see it a lot on snowtroopers these days. It's
Yep.
actually one of the most effective like core shots that the Empire has at the moment for a range 3 unit. So
Yo, I'm
eh,
gonna be honest. I
yeah,
want to know why the faction whose main job was to
is
fight
to fight against
droids
droids.
has
Has the least
basically
access to
zero
ion.
ion weapons in their arsenal.
Yeah, there's not as much time as we usually have in the Scoundrels to do some Republic whining, but it is at least worth mentioning that the ion gun on the bark, as of this recording, is the only access to ion that the anti-droid faction has, and
Till we get Gungans, man.
yeah, that's a little bit silly. Oh yeah, we have droid poppers, Mike. Don't we forget about that?
Yeah.
That actually is an ion that doesn't have impact, which is an extra reason to think about maybe not taking it in your list. So it's not like every list needs to have ion, but it's certainly it's a very versatile thing because a lot of people are taking armor. It's good against droids, and it's also good against shields. So hey, like that should be a part of your math. I think that's the biggest reason why, at least as far as I can tell, the Ion Snowtrooper has become the shooting core of choice for the Empire at the moment. So definitely something else to consider. And then last thing, just to quickly mention, Ordnance, Mike. There's a reason why a lot of lists just like toss Ordnance in there as kind of their third card, because it is
It's because the rest of them are bad.
well, whole other TFT mini, Mike. I'd say that Ordnance, it has the capability of being massive.
It does. It's often you can play around it,
Yeah,
but it can put your opponent in a bind for sure.
yeah.
Um,
And remember that it's not just like any vehicle that gets affected by ordnance, but also any infantry unit that happens to have armor, such as a range trooper or a dark trooper.
Wookiees with a battle shield.
Wookiees the battle shields. Be careful about that one. Keep that battle shield in offense mode, maybe, if the ordnance is in play. But and then on top of that, suppression stuff. So that's just like more stuff that you can do to have a game plan against armor. And then also, this is sort of a brief mention, but a lot of armored vehicles have side arcs that give you automatic impact, and then often less useful is the one that has back arcs that are weak points, which is basically only useful for speeders and Jedi to ever take advantage of that one. But hey, getting free impact in your pool is good when you can do it. It's easiest to get against the long side arcs such as the snail and the gav.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a good thing to remember is that if you're up against a snail or a gav, then a naked rebel trooper is a threat to it. So take advantage of that as much as you can. And I guess like before we move on to the last part, I would it would be good to ask you about impact grenades, Mike.
Yeah.
They're showing up in a lot of lists these days, especially because they are allowable in melee in New Legion, which is definitely a big thing for the charging units. What are the At what point are you just starting to toss impact grenades on units when you're list building usually?
Uh, Basically, never
Okay.
is my approach. I actually think that a lot of people that are tossing impact grenades on their units are doing this without actually kind of understanding the impact math. And I see this a lot on people throwing it on arc troopers, and I'm just like, I don't know why you're doing this. Arc troopers are going up over the top of armor generally on their own. Obviously, when they take casualties, the impact grenades can make a difference.
Yes.
But often, that first charge or attack or two is like a full boat, and you don't need the impact grenades there. Um, Impact grenades is a upgrade that you want to be putting on units that, again, impact has more of an effect the smaller dice pool it is, right?
Correct.
So
Decent choice on fleet troopers because unlike arcs, they're not going to have like an amazing 8 to 10 hits with every
they're
attack.
they're certainly not consistent, right?
Right.
So
So if you get your 3 regular hits, then and you have impact on all of them, you're pretty happy if you're trying to do damage against a vehicle there.
yep.
Um, yeah, and then last thing we should talk about is that there are many situations, Mike, where the right thing to do about armor is to not shoot at it at all. Uh, what would those situations be to you?
I mean, if you can't reliably kill the target over the course of several shots, you just shouldn't be wasting your time,
Yep.
right? And this is sometimes you have to make this decision mid game, right? You're like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, I fired at my opponent's saber tank 3 times with impact weapons on turn 2, and they saved all of them,
Yeah.
right? And all
Right.
of a sudden you're like, do I just continue throwing shots into this thing after they just went like 7 for 7 on their first few saves? Because
Totally.
at that point, your impact didn't do anything, and you probably should move on, right?
Yep.
And that is a hard choice to make mid game when this thing is like barreling down on you and killing all your stuff. But it's going to be way easier to kill everything else in their list than to continue throwing stuff, like small proportional shots into these things that you're not going to be able to consistently delete.
Yeah, it's definitely something that when I was a newer player, I would find myself like after the fact realizing that I kind of got on tilt trying to kill this like impossible to kill AAT, and in doing so, wasted all of these hit results that could have been just obliterating B1 units
Yep.
that entire time. So I agree that that game plan may need to change mid game based on how successful your early game plan was, and like you said, against either your dice may crap out or against those red save units, they might just like hit everything, and then you're like, well, I have X amount of dice left to throw in the entire game. Even if I did like barely manage to kill that tank or whatever, is it really going to be worth it if I'm not hitting their infantry with either wounds or suppression at all?
Yeah.
Because it's true that with with vehicles you can get them to the damage state where they're less effective at a certain point, but you're these days you're never actually like taking attack dice away. And whereas if you're shooting at trooper units with a bunch of regular hits, you're taking attack dice away, you're building suppression, you're doing all these things, and it just goes back to the idea of not wasting your dice. So sometimes the best thing is just to leave it alone. I'd say that I had a recent game against Tempest actually where my game plan was to just like throw everything at Marquand and then leave the other two ATSTs alone while I dealt with their infantry, and that worked out pretty well. Every game is going to be different, and you should have a game plan at the beginning, but then be willing to adjust it depending on results.
Yeah, I do think that's the most likely scenario is that they have, somewhere between like 1 and 4 armored targets. You're gonna get to kill 1 or 2, and
Yeah,
you gotta pick what they are, right?
yeah,
And the other thing that I'd like to toss in on this is that like if you took a bunch of impact options and you see your opponent showed up with like 4 astromechs sitting behind their army, like you still probably should flex into like not dedicating your shots at the armor at that point, right? Like, because you're gonna have to like kill things twice,
right,
right?
right.
And again, you're just wasting all that damage. And I think the last thing I want to suggest is there are other options in command cards. There are things like maximum firepower and the silly Ewok one log traps,
Yeah.
that are like one shot impact.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to call them solutions because they're not solutions on their own, but they are good ways to supplement your other impact options with additional kind of oomph.
That's very fair. Log traps is a great way to, because it happens pre-activation. It's a great way to deal with a already damaged ATRT, especially if it's a flamer ATRT that's about to kill like 12 Ewoks.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's yeah, there are those command cards that give you those extra options, and then of course many of the good impact pools that we've been talking about are coming on vehicles themselves.
Yes.
We mostly focused on talking about troopers just because the vehicles bit is a little bit more obvious, but even then though you may want to consider doing some split firing to give the pool with a higher ratio of impact to dice against the armor, and then give the other weapon shoot it at some troopers over there. All right. Well, listen, that was less than 20 minutes, and we just completely told you how to deal with armor, which means that you should never lose to armor ever again.
Ever.
Mike Berry gives that as a guarantee. So direct all complaints to him. But thank you for watching. If you like what we're doing, please do check out our Patreon, and we'll see you next time.